Hey, and welcome to the Whiskey Wealth Warrior podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer, and on this show is for those who respect the craft of fine spirits and think long term about wealth. Now, before I dive in, a very quick word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Whiskey Wealth Mastery, where serious investors learn to build wealth through whiskey casks the right way. Now, if you've ever wondered whether whiskey could be more than something that you just drink, and actually something that you own, grow, and monetize strategically, that's exactly what we do. Find out more on LinkedIn at Glen Palmer Online or check out the show notes below. Because if you're going to play the long game, you might as well play it like a warrior. Now, on today's episode, this is a real special one for me. Today, I am joined by two guests. Greta, who is a brand strategist turned whiskey storyteller that is traveling the world uncovering hidden stories behind distilleries. And then we have Bill McHenry, founder of the McHenry Distillery, Australia's most southernmost distillery, built on 100 acres at the edge of Tasmania and producing some of the purest spirits on the planet. Now, this is about craft, patience, and people behind the liquid. Chaps, welcome to the show. Really appreciate you joining me for this very, very special episode. I really appreciate it. So thank you.
We're glad to be here. This is great. This is great. And you are in the morning in the UK, and we are in the evening in Tasmania.
Yep. So I can only imagine that this is going to be a cracking episode, and I can't wait to get stuck in. So this is one for both of you. So if time travel became a reality and you both had a chance to go back in time to when you first started your careers, what advice would the people that you are now tell your younger selves? Anyone can start.
You're the visitor.
All right. On the visiting team, I should be wearing a white jersey. What would I tell myself back then? I don't know what I would say, because where I am now was a result of all the mistakes I made.
Yeah.
And had I told myself, here's a list of 872 mistakes you're going to make, I wouldn't have listened. So honestly, because I had no mentors. I lost my parents early. I had no older siblings. I had no mentors telling me what to do, and so I just stumbled around through life, doing all kinds of various things. The one thing I probably should have done, looking back in my career, is I should have gone to work for a big ad agency up in LA and done TV commercials.
Yeah.
And I probably would have been really good at that, and but it wasn't until many years after I got started and I'm running my own ad agency that I'm thinking, that's what I should have done. So. But had I been making TV commercials, I might have ended up doing film, and I would be fabulously wealthy, and I'd probably be sitting on a couch watching TV right now. So
Okay.
I'm happy for where I ended up. So
Yeah.
I ended up at the bottom tip of Tasmania. It's the most fabulous place on the planet. So
Nice.
yeah, my advice is don't listen to anybody. Just go stumble around and hope you get lucky.
So you sort of did grinder for distilleries, didn't you, Chris? You just reached out to us.
Yeah.
With it was just the Hail Mary throw.
That's what I did.
See who connected.
I did some research, and I found every distillery that I could find in Scotland, Australia, and I just pestered the hell out of people till they either told me to go away or they said, "Okay, let's talk."
Nice.
So actually, Glenn, is Grinder international, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah. It's from the old movie. The old movie. Second place is steak knives, and third place is you're fired. So
Yeah.
always be selling, always be doing something. So yeah.
And yourself, Bill? Have you got something to add to that?
Yeah, I think. Look, okay. So I often think in pictures and in music, and I always replay to myself that Edith Piaf song, "Je ne regrette." So. Sense, have no regrets.
That's one of my favorite songs,
Yeah.
Boy.
Embark on life without regrets. I mean, look, we make mistakes, and the mistakes make us better.
Yeah.
I certainly tell my children, try everything once. How do you know if you don't like it if you haven't tried something? So, endeavor to be inquisitive about life. Go to places that challenge you, do things that test, your personality and your resolve.
Yeah.
But don't ever, end up being 70 and going, I wish I had.
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely. And Chris, you've built a career spotting what others miss in brands. So, what made you step away from that really fast-paced world and committed to something as slow and as patient as whiskey storytelling?
So this kind of goes back to, when I look back at my whole life, when I was running ad agencies, we always had deadlines every 20 minutes. And, our clients wouldn't call us until there was a trade show. It's like, oh my God, we need something by next week. So, when you run an ad agency, every minute is time. So I was
Yeah.
constantly looking at the clock and constantly having to do deadlines. And when you're coming up with campaigns, I'm having to make something out of nothing every day. So it's a lot of stress, and you're either cut out for that or you're not. I mean, a lot of people can't do it. Me personally, I thrive on it. If I don't have a deadline, I do nothing. But the one thing that I've always looked at my whole life that I thought, okay, if I didn't do what I do, I would want to be a winemaker, because the idea of not having a deadline today at 4:30 and having and doing something that's going to go that won't reach maturity for 20 years or 10
Mm,
years. And this, early on, I never thought about whiskey making, but I thought, the concept of doing something that's decades out is just fascinating to me, to where time just means something completely different. For me, it was always looking at my watch.
You know what you said there about winemaking, you become less connected to, the Friday deadline.
Right.
But you become more connected with the cycles of life,
Right.
the rhythm of nature.
Yeah, the seasons, the years.
And that is your,
yeah,
that's your watch.
yeah, yeah, and that's a big picture that most people, just can't seem to fathom. So
yeah.
yeah, for me, that was the if I was to be anything else other than what I've done, I would want to go make spirits of some sort.
Yeah.
And and with whiskey, you're doing something that may not come into its own for 10 years after you're gone.
Yeah, that's
And
the
that's
beauty of it.
fascinating.
Yeah. And Bill, you went from a very corporate life, you worked in big pharma, you worked in global cities, to then totally flipping the switch and buying land in Tasmania. So what was the moment that you thought, you know what, right, I'm going to build a distillery? And what made you have that flip of, going from that very fast-paced corporate life to the more slower, like maturing pace of whiskey distilling?
Yeah. So, look, the seed, the germ of the idea was a conversation with my neighbour 20 years ago. I was at a bit of a crossroads in my career. I I just joined a company as their general manager, commercial, looking after the R&D and commercial development of a biotech compound. The company effectively was being put into receivership. I'd only been there 2 months, and so I thought I'd landed the job of a lifetime. And then all of a sudden, it felt like the carpet was being pulled from under me.
Mm,
And I think, there will be some of your audience that will resonate with this. I had been made redundant twice in my life before then. And it is, for a person who's trying to develop a career, it's one of the worst things that can happen to you.
oh, I
You know,
can attest to that.
we 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 get immersed in our jobs. Our jobs become our personality. I mean, we spend often, if you look at any given day, we spend more time with work colleagues than sometimes we do with our family. If you take out sleep, we might spend, a few hours with our family, but 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours with our work colleagues. So it is so much the core of our lives. And
Yeah.
then to be told that you're no good and that we don't want you anymore and that you're being cut is for me was eviscerating. It cut me to the core. So it happened once, the first time, I rebounded. It happened a second time. You think, Christ, is there a way to escape this? So in a way, starting my own business was an insurance policy against that. So there's only one person that could sack me, and that's my wife. Okay, so and I sleep with her, so I sleep with the boss. So that works.
Big one in Australia.
Oh yeah, perfectly.
Yeah.
So that was one element of the story. So my neighbour said to me, he said, literally, Bill, if you need a career change, I know the perfect move for you. And he said, your name's William McHenry. With a name like that, you should learn the bagpipes and make whiskey. And I fell in love with the idea. I think there was a lot of other things in place at the time. So I'm the son of a 10-pound Tom. My father came over here after the Second World War, and essentially I'm first generation Australian.
Yeah.
And a lot of the other immigrants that were coming out at the time, Italians, Greeks, Yugoslav, Hungarians, they talked about the sort of family generational businesses, olive farms, vineyards, wineries, cheesemakers. You hear in their stories about these sort of generational families. And I thought, how lovely would that be if I could gift a business to my three children, how I could leave them with a legacy, to be able to develop and nurture and grow and so forth. So there was a bit of this sort of fatherly sort of instinct to want to create something for my children to be able to take on and develop. And there's also a little bit of insurance policy for me. How can I take control of my life and create something that I enjoy and surround myself with the people I like? I mean, when you join a company, it's someone else has made those recruitment decisions. When you have your own business, you make all the recruitment decisions. So, so you change the whole landscape. So that was what sort of drove me, Glenn, I suppose.
Yeah. And I take it your children have embraced the whiskey ethos.
Yeah, look, there's a bit of sadness in my story. Three children: Hamish, Lucy, Katie. One boy, two girls. Hamish regrettably took his life 5 years ago now.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And look, I bring it up because I say this to people: when you stop mentioning the name of someone that's dear to you that's died, that's truly when they die.
Yeah.
So you must continue to talk about them, remember them, celebrate them. And so Hamish is still very dear to my wife and I, and also I think we're unfortunately afflicted with a lot of suicide. It's certainly in Australia, I'm sure in the UK and elsewhere in the world. We need to talk about these things. The conversation we have now could save a life.
Yeah.
So I think it is really important that people reach out. If they see someone in trouble, they ask, "Are you okay?" If someone is in trouble, they reach out and go to their friends and say, "Look, I'm not feeling the best. Can we have some time together?" So Hamish was immersed in the business. So it is sad to see that he didn't continue in the business when he took his life. The two girls, Katie's a lawyer, and she remains pretty committed to the business and interested in how well we do, and she helps me on the legal side. Thankfully, I stay out of a lot of the trouble, so I don't need Katie's advice too often.
Have a lawyer in the family.
And my youngest, Lucy, she's an absolute genius when it comes to social media. So she does a lot of our social media stuff. She does it remotely. As you can see from the fire, Tassie can be a bit of a cold place. So she's a bit of a snowbird, and she's gone up to Queensland to escape the cold. But she still does remain in the business. So
nice.
As a family, we meet quarterly to discuss the performance, some of the strategy and so forth. So it is still very much a family business, even though the girls aren't geographically, sort of located close to where we do things.
Nice. And Chris, with Still Life Stories, you're not just visiting the distilleries, you're living with them, you're working on them. What are you hoping to uncover what a typical whiskey documentary or blog would necessarily miss?
Boy, we just found one today.
Oh, I
So
love to
I'm,
hear
I'm going to
this.
tell you my favorite advertising story, and I'll keep it short. I'm like 19. I'm a graphic design major in college. There's a magazine called Communication Arts, and it's a design magazine. And I was up, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I probably hadn't started the project that was due the next day until 1 o'clock. So I'm struggling. I'm trying to come up with something brilliant. So I'm thumbing through this magazine, trying to steal somebody else's ideas to do a nice design. And I come across an ad, and the headline was "Looking for the Capo di Astro Bar." So I stopped, and it was just an all-type ad. There's no design, but the headline was so good, it grabbed me by the neck and pulled me in. And it was an ad written by a freelance copywriter named Bud something or other. Sorry, Bud, if I don't remember your name right. But he basically tells a story. He's a copywriter at an ad agency in New York. He gets a brand new piano company as a client. He doesn't know anything about making pianos. It's the Aeolian pianos. So he insists and he bugs everybody to let him go up to the factory and go hang out there for 3 or 4 days and watch, find something that he can talk about. Because at that time, an Aeolian was $5,000, just like a Steinway. He said,
Yeah.
why the hell would somebody buy an unnamed, unknown piano when for the same money you can buy a Steinway? So he went up there, he hung out, watched them make them, beautiful pianos, and yeah, there's
Oh no.
a
Yes, I like that.
there's spokesmodel here. So he wants to make it, and he can't find that thing, and he's about to leave. He talks to the sales manager, and they had a Steinway in the showroom next to an Aeolian. He goes, I don't get it. I mean, you guys make great pianos, but what's the difference? And the salesman says, well, there really isn't one, except ours weighs like 50 pounds more. He goes, really? Why? And he says, well, climb under. They climb to the piano, and there's a thing called the Capo di Astro Bar, which is this curved um, um, strut that holds the piano harp, the big iron harp that holds all the strings. So this is just, it helps support it. And he said, if you look at the one on the Steinway, it's like a little tinker toy. It's a little bitty thing. And ours is huge and thick and heavy. It weighs, 80, 70 pounds more than the Steinway. And he goes, well, why? Why would anybody care? He says, well, it doesn't matter for the first 50 years, but after 50 years, that Steinway is going to be harder to tune than ours because ours, that thick, heavy Capo di Astro bar keeps it in tune.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy just kind of threw out, oh, by the way, the Metropolitan Opera in New York is moving, and the only thing they're taking with them is their Aeolian piano. That was the first headline for the first ad he wrote, and he created a 6-year waiting list. So that was the thing. He found that little piece of magic that changed everything. That nobody noticed. These people have been making pianos for 100 years. Nobody realized that there was that one thing that beat Steinway.
Mm.
And we found the Capo di Astro Bar today.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So his property has a spring, which he has named after his wife Allison, who's over there somewhere. Making dinner, and that spring. The reason that spring is coming down out of the side of Mount Arthur because it's about halfway from the ground level up to the top where that spring comes up. Yeah. About halfway. That's it. All right. So his property goes up one side. The other side of the mountain is a national park. So it's full of giant trees and underbrush and all this.
Yeah.
And there are rock formations all over Tasmania. 40% of Tasmania is dolomite, and it's a really, really hard stone that forms these big columns. And what happens is in that mountain, all that water and all this rain that pours here every day filters through that mountain, through this dolomite. It hits some limestone, and then it goes vertically, or horizontally out of that Alice Springs, of that spring that pops up out of the ground right there where the ferns are twice your height.
Yeah.
And that dolomite has particular minerals in it that help flavor the water, that purify the water, and actually help with the fermentation. And we're just talking today, and I asked, well, you mentioned something about the stone and the mountain, and he mentioned the dolomite. I go, wait a minute, and I looked it up, and it's ideal stone for making whiskey. Who knew? I didn't know, not until like an hour and a half ago. So I just wrote a piece where basically that's a great Capo di Astro bar, for this distillery. That stone, that particular type of stone, of which it's all over Tasmania. And if probably wasn't for that hard stone, Tasmania would be underwater. I mean, really,
Yeah.
that's what's holding the island up, because it doesn't wear down. I mean, there's giant cliffs all over the coastline here. So
Yeah.
that blew me away.
So
Yeah.
whilst there's quite a thriving whiskey industry in Tasmania, Glenn, and some of your listeners and watchers will know about other Tasmanian distilleries. We're, I think, the only one with our own springs. So a
Yeah.
lot of them are located either near the cities or in sort of industrial areas. We actually deliberately located our distillery in a forest, in the middle of the wilderness, to source the water. And you mentioned limestone. It's actually sandstone.
Yeah.
That's okay. You only knew that an hour ago, but it's
I'm
dolomite
learning.
and sandstone. So the sandstone acts as a filter, and it's really to suckle the minerals that do wash out of the dolomite, which really support yeast growth. And you've got places in the UK which are famed for the water for the brewing. And whiskey lovers will know whiskey starts with beer. So basically, whiskey's beer that grows up.
Yeah. And that sort of goes on to my next question there, Bill. So your distillery, it's at the southern tip of Tasmania, some of the cleanest air and water in the world. And it gets distilled through Mount Arthur, like you say, through the rocks. So how much of the rest of the environment actually influences the spirit in the glass?
So whiskey is a simple product: barley, water, yeast. All the barley comes from Tasmania. We use basically
Nice.
100% barley. All the water off our property, and we do use commercial yeast. We can't avoid that. We do take a bit of dunder, and so we can basically reuse some of the yeast from previously. And clearly, if we're using dunder, we'll get some of the environmental yeast and bacteria that will be just naturally in our environment.
Yeah.
All of the whiskey is aged at the distillery in our bond stores. And what is unique about our place, and very different from other microclimates in Tasmania and certainly in Australia, is we have a cool, temperate environment. We lose 1% of angel share. And so we can allow for slow aging of our whiskey in the barrels.
Yeah.
We're one of the few places in Australia that can create a 70, 80-year-old whiskey because we lose, so little. So I think the terroir, the environment, this temperate environment, is fundamental, because if you think about it, whiskey, sort of develops, 3/4, 70%, 80% of its flavour, of its characteristics while it's in the barrel.
Yeah.
So allowing us to keep whiskey in there maturing for 15, 20 years is unique in Australia. It's commonplace in places like Scotland and maybe Japan.
And that's the thing, Bill. That's a lot of people do not realize that, because when I first reached out to Chris and he was telling me about your distillery in Tasmania, the very first thing that I thought of is Australia is very hot. They are going to get massive.
Yeah.
I'm wearing a down vest and 2 sweaters.
Yeah, so it's important to for a lot of people to know that where your environment is, you're only losing 1%. You can age your whiskey without losing a hell of a lot of spirit, and that
Well,
for
I tell
me
you,
that
a little
was
anecdote,
mind blowing.
So a little anecdote. So I was being interviewed on the radio for something. It was a while back. And I said, they asked, that's right, it was all about expats, all sort of people that have moved to Tasmania. Why did you move to Tasmania? Because, for a long, long time, Tasmania's had a sort of negative population growth. Most people grow up here and then tend to move to Sydney and Melbourne and other places for work, for career, all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I came here for the climate. And I said, look, it's the perfect climate for making whiskey. It's cool, damp, moist, and cold. And, I talked about the reasons, whiskey and so forth, got off the radio. And then I started getting bullied. I got all these emails from these people saying, well, you're not much of an advocate for tourism, Tasmania, are you? And
It's always sunny outside.
yeah, I'm going, whoa, that's the truth. And I looked it up, okay? And at our distillery, we share pretty much similar climatic conditions, except on the reverse, to Ireland. Now,
Wow.
what's not good to like about that? If you're making whiskey, you can say you share similar climatic conditions to Ireland.
Yeah. And they
Yeah.
have kangaroos.
Yeah.
I just saw my first 2 kangaroos today. That was
I
a big
with
deal for me.
kangaroos. Love it.
And crayfish.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, Chris,
So-
as you travel and immerse yourself in all these different distilleries, are you starting to see patterns in what separates the good from the truly exceptional distilleries? Or are they just, all of them really, really good in their own way?
I've been to every place I've been has been completely different than the place before, and this is completely different than everything before that. I mean, the last one I was at was on Four Island off the coast of Germany, and the true confession is here. I'm holding a.
I'll ask about that in a second.
Probably the little tricky part there is here. It should be back there.
Oh,
Like,
sorry.
yeah.
Okay. That's my fault. Oh.
But when I wanted to go do this in Scotland, so I compiled all these lists of Scottish distilleries, and somehow Henritson's Farm and Distillery got on my list. They're not off, and it said it was on Four Island. And honestly, idiot that I am, I thought Four Island was off the coast of Scotland. It's not. It's off the coast of Germany. And I sent them a note saying, "Hey, I want to come stay there for a while. I want to write about you." And they wrote back and said, "Yes, this sounds wonderful. Come stay with us." And then I looked on the map. I go, "Wait a minute, where the hell is this?" And but I ended up spending a month. It's a family-owned farm and distillery that's been the same family for 400 years.
Wow.
And the island is 7 miles across. There's 4,000 people there. Most of them, well, all of them will speak some German and some English, but whenever the Germans go home in the winter, they'll speak Frisian. And there's only 4,000 people on the planet that can speak Frisian. So I mean, it's a completely different culture than anything I'd ever seen. And I lived there for a month, and I had an e-bike, and I rode around the island every day, and I got to where I knew the island well enough that I didn't have to use my GPS on my phone. So and they're making spectacular whiskey because that north wind, that North Sea wind, comes blowing in. Their farms and fields are half a kilometer away from the sea. So my theory was, and I haven't yet to prove this, is that there's so much wind and rain that the barley ends up with really strong stalks from not getting blown over from the constant wind. So it grows stronger and sweeter. So I just made that up. I don't know if that's true or not. So if there's a scientist out there that knows about wind and barley stock, please let me know.
See if you're right. So, Bill, when you started McHenry, did you have that clear vision of the style of whiskey you wanted to create? Or has that evolved over the years as you've learned more about the land and the process?
Yeah, I think so I have a science, microbiology, biochemistry background, and I thought, okay, I need to swab all the inside of this Scottish distilleries, get the yeast, and basically replicate that. And I quickly learned that was ridiculous. I think the terroir comes from the place.
Yeah.
It is about the air, it is about the water, but it's actually more than just that. It's not just geography, but it's also the people. And so ultimately, I try and create whiskies that I love.
Yeah.
So to go back to your very first question, Glenn, and I think it was something about, I think I answered it in the context of regrets or what would you do differently.
Yeah.
I think now, be true to yourself. Okay, you are who you are, and there's no way of redefining yourself. For the people you want to be, you want to be liked by. I think now I create whiskies which I like drinking,
Yeah.
and ultimately I want to be able to sit down with those whiskies and with good friends and really enjoy the moment. And I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that I've got a wife that works outside the business, so the fantasy would be that I don't actually have to make money out of business.
Right.
And I can just enjoy whiskey with good friends. That's
Yeah.
not the reality. That's clearly not the reality of life. But ultimately, my style is an easy drinking, slightly sweet, um, mid ABV whiskey. We cut our whiskies from barrel strength at 55, 54 down to 46. We like to have a little bit of alcohol in there because it does carry flavor and it is lovely on the palate once your palate's used to it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I like. I'm a bit of a sort of harlequin. I do like peated whiskies on occasions and unpeated whiskies on other occasions, so I can slip from both one to the other. So yeah, an easy drinking social whiskey. That's what I enjoy.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to explain it.
No, that explains it perfectly, because at the end of the day, if you like the whiskies that you create, surely there's going to be other people with
Yeah,
the same palate as you that are going to like it as well.
yeah.
So
We're looking for the whiskey Venn diagram. Where those people and we sit in the middle and we just overlap. And clearly, the bigger the overlap, the better.
yeah,
But as long as there's some overlap, I'm happy.
Well, so he mentioned something that goes back to a question you asked earlier about what commonalities have I discovered.
yeah,
One is the people that I've meet that I've just immediately been akin to are the people who don't do what they do for the money. They
yeah.
do what
They
they
do
do
it for the
because they
passion.
just have this insane desire and love of doing it. And that's what I keep discovering. I have no interest in going to, the giant, the corporate machines. I want to work with small, family owned, the very nature of the beast.
Yeah,
And the people who do that are the people who just love doing it so much. And if they make money doing it, great. But if they didn't, they would still do it.
Yeah,
yeah,
there's always, we're in business, taxes, rates,
Yeah.
We've got employees and so forth. So there is always a connection between profitability and what we're doing. But I think it depends on what order you put it in. We try and make good product that people love, and we will get the sales. We don't try and drive for sales and try for, we realize that satisfied customers will basically give us our business. And so that's critical to us. We've got to
yeah.
delight people first.
Yeah. And, my dad always used to say to me, Glenn, if you do what you love, you will never have to work a day in your life.
That's exactly right.
And I do really try and live that ethos. And on the second bit there, Bill, is if you make a whiskey that is exceptional, and to be honest, I really want to taste your whiskeys now that I've seen your.
It's good.
We'll get some to you, man. Don't worry.
Third party here. It's good. It's
Yeah.
good.
But the thing is if you make a really, really good product, it sells itself. You don't have to work hard to make the sales because you've got that really good product. And from reading where it comes from, the water, the location, everything, I really want to. There's some 10-year-olds that you've got on your site that, I really want to try. Anyway, I
It's good.
digress. I digress. Chris, from your.
I know I don't know how long we've got, Glenn, But see, the thing is, just on this, can I just sort of, I want to sort of um, follow up on this. So we realise we're the most remotest distillery in Australia.
Yeah.
Inconvenient.
We're an inconvenient distillery. People have actually got to make a journey to come here, and I
Yeah.
love it when people come here. You know, I got an email from a Canadian that came down and said, "Oh, it's great," you know, that you came out. I mean, I give impromptu tours because I think I want to reward effort.
Yeah.
You know, these
Yeah.
people have made a big effort to come and see me, and so we'll just walk up the distillery. We'll have a little quiet tour. Um, if nothing else, I want to be able to sell my whiskey around the world and feel like people are visiting the distillery. And actually, this is where Chris has been really great. He's sort of helping us to engage in some ideas that basically we can take our distillery into people's living rooms. We can take them into, you know, places where they're enjoying it with their friends. And so we're working on a couple of concepts so we can come to you.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same as you coming to us, but we'd love you to sort of live the life we live and experience it, whether it's in video or it's in, you know, the pairing of the water and the dolerite, the rocks, and think, you know, we're coming up with some fantastic concepts, which is
Yeah.
really making me excited because, you know, the world is getting smaller and smaller, but at the moment it's basically getting harder and harder to travel with price of diesel and jet
Not my
fuel.
fault. Not my fault.
Yeah. Yeah. And Chris,
So with he picked me up at the airport. So I flew from Los Angeles to Sydney and waited around for a couple hours. Got on a plane from Sydney to Hobart. He picks me up at the airport. We're driving down there, and I mean, it's if you haven't been to Tasmania, it's stunning. It is just one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life. And it didn't hurt that when I landed here, the weather was exactly the same as it was in Los Angeles when I left. It was like 72 and sunny and perfect. And
Conversion to
I can't do that. I don't have that math muscle.
I think it's
20,
I think it's
23.
around 25, 26 degrees, somewhere
Yeah,
around
all
there.
right. Well, imagine a perfect Celsius temperature. That's what it was. It was beautiful and sunny. And we take a long drive through the woods to finally get to the road off to his place. And you go through a little tiny town, and then you turn right on a dirt road. And we're driving up this long dirt road through this like dense, dark, deep forest. And he just kind of throws out, we really are in an inconvenient location. And I got the Inconvenient Distillery. I mean, that was the first headline for the first article I wrote because it's inconvenient as hell to get here.
Yeah.
And you've really got to want to get here, and that to me makes it all the much more worth the trip. I mean, if you could take an elevator up the top of Mount Everest, nobody'd go. It's
Yeah.
it's worth it. It's worth going through that, and everything you see, you're rewarded along the way with the most spectacular scenery you've ever seen in your life.
You're sort of
But,
selling it to me. Now I want to come even more.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, I had no idea what to expect coming here. And honestly, in that first article I wrote, most people, Americans, especially, when we think of Tasmania, we think of that Bugs Bunny cartoon character, and that's where
Yeah,
Errol
Tasmanian
Flynn came
Devil.
from. Yeah, and that character's name was the press's nickname for Errol Flynn. So that's pretty much all we know.
Yeah.
But when you come here, it's it's not on this planet. It's a completely different universe. I've never
Yeah.
seen anything like this in my life.
So the design, since by design, we set the distillery up because it was about place, ingredients, terroir. It wasn't about anything convenient about a roadside, shop that we could drive our sales through, Celador City, where we can actually get access to people. It was more about inherently the product.
Yeah. I mean, when you obviously built this and when you found the property, I'm assuming what went through your mind is, we've got the mountains, we've got the springs. This is going to make an exceptional whiskey. And that's what the whole precipice of it was. You know, you want to, you know, there is a lot of places out there that take whiskeys from, you know, rivers and stuff like that, and they might not be as great as other places. However, you've got an exceptional water running through, which is going to make your whiskey absolutely phenomenal. And that makes me really, really want to taste your whiskey, to be honest.
So look, you can, you know, scientifically, you know, engineers can turn dirty water into clean water. We can do that.
Yeah.
But I want to do everything as sympathetically and gently as I can.
Yeah.
You know, why not have a distillery at the base of a spring? You know, where effectively that water might have been in the mountain for 1,000 years, 10,000 years. I honestly don't know. But literally, we harvest it straight out of the spring. It doesn't run across soil that's been contaminated and silted up. We literally tap the spring, and so every drop of water that goes in the distillery is pure from that aquifer. And so for me, it's a bit more, I don't know, I mean, gosh, to me, it's a bit more honest about manufacturing. You know, we've gone to the source of our ingredients rather than bring them to us.
Yeah.
And you know, it is inconvenient. It's harder to do that. But I think, you know, it's honoring those ingredients that we use to make things with, which I think, is a, you know, I think it's a better approach, you know, to things. But anyway, everyone has a different approach. So you know,
So Chris, you know, we spoke a little bit about the Inconvenient Distillery. So from your perspective, as someone documenting these stories, what stands out to you about what Bill's actually built here compared to the other distilleries that you've experienced?
You know, every distillery and every independent bottle that I've worked with has a spectacular story. You know, and maybe I'm just lucky that everybody I've encountered is just they have a worthwhile story. And you know, and my approach is I'm gonna come get your chili. That's my favorite Texasism. We Texans take our chili real seriously. And you know, no, you never would go to somebody and taste their chili and say, you know, it needs a little bit of this because you would get shot. But every distillery has this unique, fantastic story. And but the unique, fantastic story here is we didn't build this to be a tourist trap. We didn't build this to, you know, to put a bunch of signs, you know, on a busy airport and just take two lefts and you're here and boy, the food's great. And you know, they're not selling a whole bunch of stuff other than this spectacular whiskey that just comes out of the mountain. And in fact, you know, Bill and I joked. I said, you know, he told me that all the water that comes through, you know, is from the spring, and I'm staying in what they call the bothy. So at the top of the hill, I'm just walking distance, short distance to the spring. There's a cabin. You got to tell him why you built the cabin. I'll let him do that. But the cabin is, you know, it's completely off the grid. It's 2 rooms. The only heat is the fireplace, and it's been cold, so I've been building a lot of fires. But the water coming straight out of the tap is coming straight from the spring.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love this water. Wherever I've gone in the world, I taste the water, and if it's really delicious, I want to stay.
And one thing Chris doesn't know is that water actually helps grow follicular hair.
You think? See,
I need to come there to drink the water.
We'll see about that. We'll see about that. So if you live in Texas where it's always hot, the sun's always out, if you have no hair, you have a hat. So
yeah.
I've probably got 30, 40 hats in my closet, and my wife gives me major grief every time I buy another one. So and just before I took off to go start the Still Life Stories, I've been looking for a Stetson for years, a good one that I really like. They're hard to find the right hat. You got to go try on 100 hats. And especially with a good Stetson, I went into a little Western store on a motorcycle ride out west of town, and I saw this hat, and I felt it. Oh man, this feels great. And the color is called Whisky.
Oh, perfect.
This was put in front of me because I have to bring this and wear it all over the world. So I've been wearing this hat everywhere I go, and I spent a lot of time in a little village in Scotland, and they all called me Texas Chris.
Nice.
So you know
Nice.
what? I'll take it. It keeps the sun and the rain off my head.
Well, that's it. So, Bill, what's
Yeah.
been the hardest part of building a distillery from scratch that most of the people from the outside just would not appreciate?
Look, it actually is a beautiful segue from Chris and the Bothy. So if you Google McHenry Distillery and put a keyword in Bothy, you'll see what Chris is talking about. So, moving from Sydney to Tasmania, 3 young children, high school, primary school, they need an education. So the family were located in Hobart. That's 100 kilometres north, an hour and a half's drive from the distillery. So every day of the week, I would basically drive down, pack the car with 4 or 5 meals that Alison had cooked over the weekend, and work at the distillery. And literally 24 hours a day, I'd be distilling, I'd running the still all the time. I would camp on the site, and we started in December, and slowly, summer waned and spring came, and then winter, and I found it was just too hard camping on the site. So I built my own little bothy,
Yeah.
this little cabin on the top of the mountain, and it was. I remember sitting up there at night, being a little bit, I don't know, melancholic, because here am I, trying to develop this business separated from my lovely children and my wife, and I'm putting pressure on myself, but at the same time, putting pressure back in the family, and you always wonder whether you're doing the right thing, and I still think about that now. I think, was this a pursuit for me, or was this actually something that the family can benefit out of?
Yeah.
Every day I sit back and I wonder whether I'm doing the right thing. So,
You are.
I hope so. Well, look, Chris,
Yeah.
it's nice to hear you say that.
Yeah, no, you are.
But, look, for anyone that wants to start a distillery, it's one of the hardest businesses to get into. I mean, it's a mature product. I mean, what we do is our sweet spot is 10 to 15-year-old whiskey. You've got to wait that long to get an income. You've got to be basically plowing money into the business with no real insight, with no real knowledge of whether you're actually going to make it work.
Yeah.
So it is a big investment in faith. It is a big investment, and for my wife, it was a big investment in me as her husband, as the father of our children. And so I there's not a day that I don't think about what Alison has gifted to me, with this dream, this crazy dream I had. So others that want to do it, look, if you're passionate about it, that's what you want to do. Have a plan, consult widely. Forget about your fucking friends, because they'll always tell you you're doing the right thing. You got to talk to people that tell you that, you're being crazy. Check, recheck everything you do. But ultimately, if you think that it's right, do it.
Yeah.
Because it comes back to je ne regrets. Don't have regret. Don't be in your hospital bed at 85 and going, you know what?
I should have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And there's something about the bothy too. So, bothy is an old Scottish word for like a little shack up in the hills where the shepherds would go live, or but it's completely off the grid. It's utterly inconvenient. It's probably got the most spectacular views of any dwelling I've ever seen in my life. Because sitting on the front porch of the bothy, you probably see what, 100 miles?
Yeah.
You can see over 100 miles.
We say 150 kilometers.
Just small. You can see forever. and what's the mountain right next to Hobart?
Oh, you got Mount Wellington and then
Yeah.
the Harts Mountain Range, which is
Yeah.
pure wilderness, folks.
Yeah.
When we talk about, okay, I do get a bit, I mean, you know about the greenwashing.
Yeah.
Wilderness is not a 10-acre forest, that's surrounded by roads. Wilderness is raw, natural, virgin forest, and we have 40% of Tasmania is wilderness. There ain't no roads. There's nothing. It's how it was 10,000 years ago. We've got pure wilderness here, and that's what you can see from your.
So from the front porch of the little house that I'm in, I've got to take a treacherous, winding dirt road and a four-wheel drive truck to get up to the top and come all the way around. And I get to this place and I go in and I turn on the power because it's all battery charged with solar. And then I have power and their fridge goes on and all that. I grab a bunch of wood, I go build a fire real quick because it's really cold and I've got 40 minutes to get the heat up. But from that viewpoint, I can look around, 180 degrees and see maybe 4 or 5 lights in the distance.
Yeah, fantastic.
Now,
I
when
bet.
was the last time you looked out that far where you can see, 100 miles in any direction and only see a few lights?
And I bet the night sky is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. He's got an observatory too. Tell him about the observatory.
So what we do, Glenn, we have the darkest skies, probably in the world because we've got no light pollution, air pollution.
Yeah.
And so we've actually got a little hobby of mine is stargazing. So we've actually got a little observatory at the distillery.
Mm-hmm.
We've converted an old wheat silo, a little real, sort of Heath Robinson sort of conversion.
Fantastic.
A 20, 30-ton wheat silo on wheels that we can rotate and point in any direction in the southern sky. For the northerners, I'm sorry to say this, but the southern hemisphere has the best view of the solar system. We look back into the solar system.
Yeah.
200 billion stars, that are in our night sky. It's just a superb night on a clear night.
Nice. So going back, Bill, to building your distillery and a lot of people in Scotland or a lot of distilleries in Scotland to get that initial capital would sell off their casks to brokers who would then sell it to people like me or Chris. Is that something that you had to do, or is that something that you would plan to do? Or how did you start your business without the additional capital? Because like you say, most distilleries have to wait, 10, 15, 20 years before their casks mature. So to get that capital, they sell off some of the casks. Is that something that you've thought about doing?
Look, we have done it. We've only really dipped our toe into it. I have largely avoided it. From my perspective as a business owner, the problem with the cask, well, we had a buyback plan, and so we would sell a cask and then guarantee buy it back for 7, 8, 9% interest.
Yeah.
I don't want to let go of all that precious whiskey that we've made, particularly if I think it's superb. I don't want to let it leave the business outside of McHenry bottle, because if you buy a cask from us, it cannot be called McHenry Distillery. It cannot be called McHenry Whisky. It's your whiskey.
Yeah.
So we are precious about that brand name. We did do a few barrels. I tried to limit it because the metrics on casks for little distilleries like ours is that we've got to have the demand for the bottled whiskey to be able to pay for that barrel to buy it back. Because I sell a whiskey for X, I've got to buy it back for X plus 20%. And so I've got to have the cash flow to be able to afford that. We've got a distillery in Tasmania that invested heavily, or promoted heavily in cask sales. It's the Nant Distillery. They went belly up. A lot of people basically lost their money it created heartache. And look, I'm an honest broker, and I don't want to see that. And
No.
so, yeah, I'm pretty sure in the UK there was someone similar like this. There's been a
Oh
few.
yeah.
There's
Yeah.
been a sort of a road littered with failed cask investment schemes. So
And to be
probably,
honest, Bill, that is why I created Whiskey Wealth Mastery because a lot of people got scammed out of casks.
yeah.
And like any other business, there is scams out there. There is people that will over leverage and sell too much, and then all of a sudden face bankruptcy, like that distillery that you've just said. And to be honest, it's not a nice place to be in.
Oh, it's
I was
awful.
one that fell for a scam, and something that did not exist. So I can see where
Mm.
you're coming from. Yeah, totally,
So we've
totally.
done a little bit, Glenn. We've limited it to sort of smaller volumes. I'll
Yeah,
probably continue it in the future. I just sent a sample out of an investment barrel the other day to a client. We'll continue to do that. I think it's an important element for our business to be able to create some
hmm
white label whiskies. I'd love to do that because I love the fact that people are really invested in the business. They come along with the journey. They get to know me. We share time together. I love that interaction that we have with cask investors. So we'll do it, but it's on a very limited scale, Glenn. Very limited.
yeah. Well, when you do it next time, keep me in mind.
Come down, go hang out in the Bobby for a while.
That's it. Yeah, yeah,
So Glenn, so we used to we had a distributor in Italy, and part of the deal was we used to bring barmen out from Europe to actually experience Tasmania, because unless you're here, you you've got to embrace it. You've got to immerse yourself in Tasmania to really feel it. So
yeah.
I think maybe there's a candidate for another immersion.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How about it, Glenn?
Oh, I'd love to. I would absolutely love to, honestly. So, a lot of Scottish distilleries they get expert bourbon casks, Pedro Ximénez casks
Mm.
for the different flavor profiles.
Yeah.
Where do your casks come from? Do you
Okay.
get them in-house, or do you get a few from different various places to test them different flavor profiles?
Yep. So we have our own Cooper at the distillery. So we have young Sam. You met Sam
Nice.
today. And Sam, we've trained up to basically recooper barrels. We use about 50-50 American oak, French oak.
Yeah.
American oak, a basic straight bourbon cask. We're pretty selective in the American oak we use is pretty much maker's mark when we can, find it in Heaven Hill.
Yeah.
We've had a little bit of Wild Turkey, Russell's Reserve.
Nice.
They're sort of the four go-to bourbon distilleries we'll look at. We did get a little bit of, if some of your whiskey fans are Hill Rock, and Hill Rock is upstate New York, really small family distillery, using really special casks which have got this sort of hexagon pattern burned into the inside of the barrel, so to give it a bit more wood infusion.
Yeah.
So we've used Hill Rock as well. Alternatively, we use French oak wine casks. Now, the wine
Nice.
casks, because we have a really vibrant wine industry, and I've got good connections into the wine industry, port, sherry. Now, we're not allowed to call it port sherry, but everyone knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Tawny, and what's the non-sherry word for sherry?
Port.
No, it's tawny, because we're not allowed to use it, geographic indicators.
Yeah.
So port in Australia is called tawny, and sherry is called
Ah.
something.
Yeah.
There'll be people typing now going,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, we use Australian port sherry. I've just spent a little bit of time in South Australia, big wine industry in South Australia, scored about 80 different port barrels, and we're going to ship them down to Tasmania. So we literally go out and try and source as much as we can ourselves, Glenn.
Yeah.
For me, that's the enjoyment, to be really involved in the process from barrel selection, grain selection, talking to farmers about the grain we're growing, recouping ourselves. I mean, it is really sort of grain to glass business.
Yeah.
We're involved in every facet of the business. So that, that gives me joy. That basically brings a huge amount of mental sort of inquisitiveness to my life. I love it.
Yeah.
So the
And then,
barrels, French and American oak. Sorry.
yeah, and we've talked a lot about whiskey, but whiskey is not the only thing that you sell. As you saw, Chris has the McHenry Pale Ale.
Yeah.
So you've got whiskey, you've got gin, you've got vodka, you've got beer, you've got pre-mixed beverages. What made you go from whiskey to trying other different spirits and beer?
Yeah. So customer first. You know, it's a big bad world out there. Not everyone is a whiskey lover. And so we would get people visiting the distillery and go, "Have you got anything else?" I mean, we would share with them our whiskies, and they go, "Well," so we started making alternative spirits to whiskey, and that's where we got into vodka and gin.
Yeah,
Well before the whole gin craze just went ballistic. And so we do the gin and vodka as a sort of nod to basically there's a mosaic of drinkers out there. What's a little bit different in Australia is that you can have a single malt distillery that does not brew its own wash.
hmm,
And I felt that, my Scottish origins, we should celebrate the fact that we brew and distill.
yeah,
And what better way to do that than actually produce a beer that we can market? And so,
yeah,
and also being a little bit Scottish, I think I like the idea of owning my own brewery. So we brew the wash, but we also brew different styles of beer. So we make a pale ale, what we call a session ale. I'm not sure if that translates
yeah, yeah.
in yeah. So it's a mid-strength beer. We make it dark, which is just silky smooth. I love it. And we do a pilsner in the summertime. We take the dark, we put it in a whiskey barrels, and we make a whiskey aged stout. And it allows
Yeah.
us to have another conversation about the beer and the whiskey and the connections and the traditions and the process. And everyone that comes to the distillery leaves knowing more about the process, about the product. In Australia we have a very rich wine culture, and people understand the wine process, but whiskey is a bit of a foreign entity in terms of the process. So we're able to
Hmm.
talk to people and share with them the process. So beer is an important product in our range.
Yeah.
And they're great beers. They really are. I've had them all. They're just fabulous.
Yeah, I've seen some of the things on your website. So, chaps, this one is
Sorry, disclosure, Glenn.
go on.
I had nothing to do with our website. And so what you see is all done by staff and my daughter, and they surprise me every day with the stuff
It's
that
a
we're up with.
it's a fantastic website. And for those of you who haven't seen it, it's mchenrydistillery.com.au. I suggest you go visit it. So this is for both of you. When people talk about your work in 10 to 20 years from now, whether that's whiskey or other stories, what do you hope they actually say about you both?
Okay, respect for the environment, respect for the craft, respect for the ingredients we use, respect for the place we live. I want to make this my little world better than when I came here and when I was born. Chris wrote this lovely little piece the other day, and there were elements on it. I mean, when I stop my car, I pick up rubbish.
I've seen him do it. We're walking into a supermarket and he stops, he's picking chip bags up off the ground. And I was at the distillery taking pictures the other day, just wandering around taking pictures. And I realized that every time I got a picture that went vertically, you could see giant trees in the background, not telephone lines and skyscrapers. There's a giant, enormous old growth forest all around this place. And I began realizing that's the real picture. I get a bit of a roof line and a McHenry logo, and then these giant 300-foot tall trees. And I got a picture of him, which I love this picture. He's just walking around picking, flotsam and jetsam up off the ground. And I get a picture of him, and he just stopped to look at me, and he's got a handful of trash. And so like the idea of greenwashing, of people trying to look like they're really taking care of the environment and really don't give a rat's rear, that's not here. I mean, he's doing the work to do it and not making a deal about it. So my job is to make a deal about it. So I'm making a deal about it. He's doing it the right way and not asking for anybody to care or watch. But that's when something matters, when you do it when nobody's watching.
Yeah.
My appeal to your listeners and watchers of your podcast is that that bit of rubbish you see is not going to go away just because you walk past it.
No.
And most often there's a bin 50 meters away. If there's not a bin, you can put it in your hand, put it in your car, and you put it in the bin when you get home.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I think that's what me and you are very, very similar. I've got a little, well, they're called static caravans, and it's a caravan on a caravan site. But the reason why I love this place so much is the Lincolnshire coast. It's just unspoilt beaches, miles and miles of unspoilt beaches. And one of the things that I like to do, well, I don't like to do it because I don't like seeing it, but I will pick up rubbish on the beach for the simple reason that this is a beautiful world that we live in, and we've got to look after it. And you guys, you can see it every on your website. You can see it speaking to you now. You've got that passion, and I chaps, I really appreciate you coming on. I can't thank you enough. I'm worried about time. I've got another thing to go to. So thank you very much for sharing your experience with me. Bill, if there's a way that I can get your whiskey, which I think I can, looking at your website, I'm gonna absolutely love to taste it, especially the stout one, because I'm a quite a big stout fan as well.
Okay, so Glenn, it's okay. I mean, look, I'm happy to leave on that last note about trying to make a little difference multiplied by millions of us, which makes a big difference.
Exactly, yeah.
Look, I'm happy to get you a little few samples out there, and maybe some of your podcast followers can message me. I'd love to sort of share the conversation further than just this little conversation tonight.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you very much for my listeners and viewers of YouTube as well. But before we sign off, Chris, Bill, if some of my listeners or viewers want to get in touch with either of you, find out more about Still Life and the McHenry Distillery, how can they do that?
Distilllifestories.com.
There we
it's
go.
all there.
I'll put that in the show notes below as well.
Yeah, and I've got TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, blah 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 blah, all that social media stuff.
And McHenry Distillery, Facebook, social media. We don't have truth social though. So sorry about that.
Well, that's fantastic. So That almost wraps up today's episode. I want to thank my guests for joining me on the show and sharing their passion with me. But before I go, very quick reminder, this episode was brought to you by Whiskey Wealth Mastery, where understanding data-driven strategy in an asset class that historically has delivered between 8 and 12% annual growth, that is exactly what we do. If you've ever wondered whether whiskey could be something that you own, grow, and monetize, not just drink, you can download a free guide at whiskeywealthmastery.com/free. You've been listening to the Whiskey Wealth Warrior podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer, and today I was joined by Chris, Greta, and Bill McHenry. Thanks again for listening and watching, and I will see you on the next episode.